Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to you, Martin. Welcome to the World Space Business Week and to the stage this morning. So thanks so much for being with us today. Just for you, and as I mentioned each time, an entire description of the achievement of Martin over the years shall be available on the website, so I shall not go through all of it, but just to give an idea on Martin's journey that has gone really from the telecom sector to infrastructure to investment over the years, bringing me into the position of CEO of NSG. So thanks again for being with us. Just to get started, I think NSG just got its first anniversary back in May, so it's still a young space company, as I would call it. So maybe to start with that, and it's just those 12 to 18 months now, could you tell us about where we stand or where you stand in the roadmap for the development of the group?
Thank you, Pacome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, look, as you said, in May we celebrated our first anniversary. I was somewhat fortunate because when I took on the role about a year and a half ago, the investor, which is PIF, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, had done a lot of work in sort of working on the strategy and sort of drafting a roadmap to implement it. So the first year we made some good progress on that implementation. We, as you may know, we are active in both the SATCOM space as well as geospatial, and the focus was really in the beginning to get to understand the customers as well as we possibly can. So the focus was mostly on the downstream activities. And to that end, we made a few acquisitions. And in parallel, sort of, we have a few teams working on, should we allocate capital to space assets? And if so, which ones and when and how? And that work is still ongoing. But the tangible achievements are really around the customer-facing activities to date.
I don't know if it's a good problem to all, but obviously with the complexity of the sector, making choices and investment decisions certainly requires a sharp look at every opportunity. So maybe they are jumping on your view of the current transformation or opportunities, and obviously some of the stakes for Saudi Arabia as your domestic place.
Yeah, look, the remit is sort of twofold. One is the company's been established as sort of a national champion, which means that it is destined to serve the majority of the sovereign and military demands in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But next to it, it also is a commercial company and is tasked to make sure that the access capacity on its own assets and other assets are translated into meaningful services for end customers. So it's a bit of a two sort of sides of the same coin, but they're very different activities. I think what you were alluding to, the industry has changed, I think, quite so much over the last few years that I don't think there will be many projects that will be started to invest in space assets purely based on commercial assumptions. There always has to be a military or a sovereign payload and a backing of a nation state or multiple nation states. That always was the case, but I do think it's even more so, and potentially even more so in the region where the Novaspace Group is based, which is the Middle East, where the geopolitical changes over the last 12 months certainly has increased the urgency and the focus on that sovereignty component.
Thank you. And so out of those months, certainly some first investments are focused in the geointelligence domain somehow, so starting with actually acquisition in the kingdom and then internationally. So can you give us some perspective on what you're trying to building in that space?
Yeah, I think if you look at the geospatial industry or the Earth observation remote sensing, I think it is fair to say it's quite a fragmented industry, both from the satellite operator perspective and the sort of satellite-based geospatial assets, but also the aerial and even the ground-based assets are quite fragmented. And on the customer side, it's pretty much the same as well. There are many different users, and it's not easy to navigate your way to getting the access to the right sort of geospatial imagery that you require to solve certain problems. So to that end, we made an acquisition. We bought a company based in Germany from Airbus called Up42. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia takes a different approach. They understand that the fragmentation is not helping the industry. Saudi Arabia itself is a very heavy user of geospatial data. And by making a duplicate of that platform and running it out of Saudi Arabia, it it connects all satellite operators and all providers of the geospatial imagery to the service providers who then turn that into insights and answers for end customers. And we think having that sort of aggregation point for both supply and demand is going to help to grow the industry, and it will allow startups, it will allow universities, it will allow research institutions to get access to a very rich archived data set of imagery and potentially task data as well. But that's how innovation starts. You need to get access to the data, to the imagery to work with, and that's what we envisioned by that acquisition. And we launched a platform in the kingdom, and it will continue to grow. And by the end of this year, we think that we pretty much have duplicated the international platform in Saudi Arabia as well.
Understanding that in the country you also that kind of regulatory or license to operator of a geospatial platform and aggregator for such capabilities.
Yeah, the regulator in Saudi Arabia took a slightly different approach, and they said, look, in order to kickstart this industry, and they had the opportunity because they basically started from scratch. They said we're going to issue one wholesale license to one party who can provide run the platform, and all civil government institutions who want to use geospatial imagery has to go through that platform, and in doing so you create a substantial amount of demand. As I said before, Saudi Arabia spends quite a bit of money on it, that is exactly what is happening.
And so the first layer was very much analytics and services and, well, maybe some infrastructure down the road, but that would be obviously other. Yeah,
the services is a completely different sort of business model, and it really depends on the industry that you're serving. We made an acquisition in Saudi Arabia itself. That's a 500 people company that provides mainly these insights to the defense and intelligence community. But you can build on that, and now we're turning it more into sort of repeatable services as opposed to sort of standard once-off projects. It's not too difficult to provide a service that sort of gives you alerts when certain oil spills are in certain areas, or where the coral growth in the Red Sea is hindered or is changing. So you can sort of provide a subscription model to these end users.
And maybe focusing then on the industry segment, as a mandate is also, I believe, very much in connectivity as well, with operation of first satellite or assets possibly in others down the road. So what's your view at tactical investment, and whether that could be use of the assets as exist, partnership, acquisition of assets? Again, you mentioned about sovereignty or what kind of partnership. How do you see that ecosystem or those new capability development for NSG?
As I mentioned before, the asset side. So there's one asset that Saudi Arabia already had invested in, a geospatial satellite called SGS-1. We're operating that satellite, so that's sort of the first cap of the rank, of which, again, the military in the kingdom is a heavy user of it, but there's also capacity that we use for commercial purposes. The way to monetize that is we've decided to enter into the aviation sector in in-flight communication services. And also to boost that, we made an acquisition here in France, and we bought a company called Display Interactive, which built a software-based platform to basically provide the best possible end-user experience to the passengers on those flights as a traffic management system. But going back to the assets, which is your question, we're looking at a number of domains, broadband, both geo and LEO, but also IoT and direct-to-device. But as mentioned before, it's not going to happen without a strong sort of aggregated demand from the defense and intelligence community in the kingdom, and that work is ongoing.
And I think even for IFC, as you mentioned, it will go to a set of partnerships to also leverage the existing. Would there be constellations or other assets up there, and having kind of a network of partners to achieve some of those or integrate some of those capabilities?
We very consciously made a decision to be the service provider, and that is the service provider agnostic of the type of sort of satellite connectivity, but it's GEO, LEO, MEO. We have a partnership with SES, who's started the Open Orbit Alliance, which is a combination of GEO and MEO satellites, and soon I'm sure there will be LEO included as well. But the aim that we're trying to achieve is that we provide carriers, airlines, an opportunity to customize their user experience. For instance, giving certain frequent flying customers a different experience for those who travel economy class, or people integrating it into mergent systems, and not just provide in-flight connectivity, but also a much broader set of entertainment services. And that requires a bit more than just a pipe to an aircraft, and that's what we've focused on.
And certainly one big topic for the week has been about direct-to-device, one of the future activity, and obviously with Spectrum transaction last week. So reflecting obviously on your broader experience in the ICT domain at large, but also that recent transaction of what D2D maybe for the sector, or maybe for you either as a service or your future capabilities. So what's your look at one of those new value propositions from space that may be in front of us for the largest part?
Yeah, look, the direct-to-device is undoubtedly an interesting segment. The question is it a niche and a complement to terrestrial network, or can it overtake or be an alternative to networks? I think there are different views. It's currently of the view that it's probably more still as a complement to terrestrial networks, so that the cost per megabit in a terrestrial network is a lot cheaper than it is in a space-based network. But hey, I could be proven wrong. The thing, of course, is how do you monetize it all, and how much money is a consumer willing to spend each month for those use cases where they're out of reach of terrestrial networks? That's the big question that nobody really tested yet. I'm a bit skeptical, but it wouldn't be the first time in my life that I turn out to be completely incorrect. So we'll see.
We'll see also the sovereign and IoT play, even in that space, as I'm sure there will be applications that will also be for sovereign and other purposes.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's obviously the sovereign angle, and I think every Department of Defense, every military force has an interest in direct-to-device services. But important is that they fully control it, and it's super important that it's controlled and owned by a trusted partner, and that's going to change the landscape as well. But that can be organized almost from a defensive perspective on a national basis, because the countries themselves determine what's happening in those countries, right? So from a spectrum allocation and spectrum use perspective, so that will be a sort of a side gig. We'll see.
Interesting. So as I know the clock is running, so just thinking of the next 12 months, do you have already some important milestones or priorities on your agenda for the next steps for NSG?
Yeah, look, of course, and
I'm sure you have.
and seeing is believing, right? But look, I hit on the theme of the sovereignty, and that is really coming to a point where some decisions I expect will be made in the next 12 months, and some announcements should follow on the back of it. Whether it's exactly the next 12 months or the next 18 months, we'll see. But we'll continue to invest on the downstream services in geospatial, because that is a market that is growing. And also on the commercial side, it's growing really fast. I think with the investments that we've made to date and some additional investments that we lined up, I think we will become a credible player in that industry in the next couple of quarters.
And where I think is also requiring quite a lot of customer engagement, awareness building to make sure to further grow the pie, or making sure all potential users are kind of addressed by the services.
As I said, in order to make informed decisions in the sort of midstream, where you invest in satellite assets, ground stations and space-based assets, you have to understand what customers want, and that's why we continue to be really focused on investing in providing services to end customers, so you get that understanding. And that will continue. That will absolutely continue.
Sounds like a plan. So looking forward to maybe see within a year where we stand with some of those new programs and priorities and investment in front of you.
Thank you, Pacome.
Thank you very much, Martin, for your presence this morning. Thank you.